Welcome back to the Sports Source. We're already about 25 minutes over, so this segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. Weather's cooling, and I mentioned this the last couple of weeks because there's truth to this. I'm not a big do-it-yourself guy, not a big home improvement project guy. Bob Hodge is. He would know that when you're doing a home improvement project in the winter temperatures, you got to get winter materials. You got to use cold weather materials if you're doing stuff right now. They've got those at A.G. Hines Company. They're located right in downtown Knoxville on Hines Street. And put it in your GPS and get down there. aghines.com is where you can learn more. Just a tremendous company. Gordon Hines and his family have run it for 4 generations. And you can't have a better brand statement than that. If you've been around 4 generations, you're good company. A.G. Hines Company. All right. Back with VFL Daniel Hood. Thanks for joining us. VFL Sterling Hinton. Thank you for crawling out of bed and making it today. From 99.1 The Sports Animal, we have Josh Ward right here. Josh, thank you for being here.
Thank you, John.
All right. And Bob Hodge is still right there. All right, here we go. What specifics did we learn from yesterday's game? I was going to start with Josh, but I think he wants to build off somebody else. So I'm going to start with Daniel.
I think very simply the SEC is still a line of scrimmage lead. You got to have a great offensive line, got to have a great defensive line. And yesterday, Georgia's defensive line with Jalen Carter and Michael Williams played phenomenal and just disrupted every single down, it seemed like.
They were without one of their keys, and they got Jalen Carter back, and it kind of covered up that because he was able to. The pressure up the middle that he was able to get all day was impressive.
Yeah, and with how close to the line of scrimmage Hooker is, I mean, he was in his face all day.
You played defensive line at Tennessee, but you started on the offensive line, did you not?
Yep.
Talk to me about this crowd noise and how that can mess up the communication on Tennessee's offensive line.
On offensive line, it's tough because you're listening for so many different calls and checks. And as center, you're trying to get all this, and I got to listen for this one small word out of all the communication that's happening. My guard and tackle, they're setting their blocks. I'm setting my guard and tackle. This right tackle's trying to pick up a blitz. Oh, by the way, the receivers are looking for their route combination, their route trees. And most of the time this is done off of hand signals. And so I got to try to see this in between the sea of all the red, and I'm doing this in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's a tough job. That's why I moved to defense. It's just hats, hands, and feet.
Josh, you want to talk about kind of the offensive line, kind of the other stuff? Go.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel's right. And Georgia's defensive line, the problems it created a lot of problems for Tennessee's entire offense. So we talk about Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt in that passing game, rightfully so, what they do offensively. But this offense is still designed around running the football effectively. And that can set up play action shots down the field, early first down success, easier second and third down, get the tempo going. And Georgia's defensive line, the way it affected Tennessee's offensive line, which hadn't happened this season, took away what Tennessee's able to do based on run success.
So let me give you a graphic here. I think we've got this on the when Tennessee can't run the ball. If my director can pop that one up there. Since Josh Heupel has been here, Tennessee's 15-7. In the 15 wins, they averaged 234 yards rushing and 5 yards a carry. In the 7 losses, about 90 yards less and 2 yards per carry. That is a big difference. 4 times Tennessee has rushed for under 100 yards and under 3 yards per carry since Heupel's been here. Alabama last year, loss. Georgia last year, loss. Georgia yesterday, loss. Pittsburgh, which was 2020, which was this year, you won it in overtime, but Pitt had to miss a couple of kicks to get you to overtime. So the run game, huge, and you're right. They take so many of those play-action shots. If you're not able to run the ball, those dry up real quick. Sterling, Bob, you got somewhere you want to go with something you learned yesterday?
Well, I learned yesterday, just unfortunate we had a day that we were out of rhythm against a quality foe like Georgia. I mean, you look at the games yesterday and you see what happened at Ohio State where they were close against an inferior foe, and then Michigan were out of sync the first half of their game against an inferior foe, and it was kind of upside down. But when you're playing a game against a team that was number 1 the entire season except last week, and you have to be in rhythm to give yourself a chance and put your best foot forward. And unfortunately, with a foe like Georgia, it was just the wrong week not to be playing Tennessee football.
Very good. Bob?
I'm going to go on the other side of the field and go with Stetson Bennett. And I had underrated a lot of Georgia's football team, but I think I underrated that kid the most because you keep thinking, well, he's a walk-on. He's not as good. He can't do this. And he comes out, and he had at least 3 passes dropped that I remember. I think he might have had more than that. A touchdown pass was
The
dropped.
one in the end zone where he had to cut, it's covered. He had to throw it low. He hits the guy in the gate.
hits the
drops
guy
it.
right in the perfect spot. And so part of my underestimating Georgia, you got their defensive line really good. Their offensive line played really well.
The DBs play a lot better than all these coaches said they would.
Number 5
Did
or
I not say
somebody.
during the week? Well, I've heard they can't cover. And
heard it all week.
But you come back to Stetson Bennett, and that kid is a good quarterback for what Georgia does. And I think when you sit there and you look at him and you go, walk on. He also got an MVP trophy, I think, from the national championship game, didn't he? So I need to quit and I need to quit jumping on Tennessee's bandwagon.
It's the Georgia week.
It's the Georgia week.
You did it 2 years ago, and this could be a pretty team. And then the pretty good team. And then they lost out. And this week you took
Next year
until
I'm going
this
to wait
week.
till after the Georgia game.
That's it. I learned something yesterday, and that is Georgia plays to the level of their competition. Jimmy hinted at that a few weeks ago, and we were talking about, well, that's not an impressive win for Georgia. And he said, they seem to be a team that just waits to play somebody. And boy, the numbers bear that out. Let me show you something that's wildly impressive. They've played 2 top 10 teams, Tennessee and Oregon. You see on the left what Tennessee has done all year, except for Georgia. 59, 34, 63, 38, 40, 52, 65, 44 points, averaging 49 points a game against everybody else, scored 13 on Georgia. Oregon, 70, 41, 44, 45, 49, 45, 42, 49, averaging 48 points a game against, 3 points in a 49-3 loss to Georgia. Wow. Georgia seems, and Bob, the analogy I used yesterday, Georgia looks like a cat, and you give it a toy mouse, and it'll bat it a couple times. It's like, it's a toy mouse, and it walks away. If it sees a real mouse, it's going to bat that thing around for hours, keeping it alive, biting it, keep it alive a little longer, get into it, keep it alive. Georgia looks to me like a team that is yawning. They're not completely into it until you put somebody up against them that's supposed to be a challenge, and woof, do they bring it. That was impressive yesterday by Georgia, what they brought to the table. Looked like a team that was ticked off, is what it looked like.
Yeah, and I think that could go a lot to how Kirby Smart's actually game planning. You know, when you're facing an inferior opponent, you're going to give your guys more one-on-one shots. You know, if you're a defensive end, hey, you know, we're not going to run games, we're not going to bring any exotic blitzes or anything like that. But then you see a game like Tennessee. Now Tennessee's got 7 films of you just going one-on-one, and that's what that offensive tackle is practicing. But then you get in the game, and now that defensive end's coming under, and you got that linebacker coming off the edge.
And of course, the guy running that defense yesterday is Will Muschamp, who has had his share of success in the past against Tennessee at times. All right, when we come back, how much damage was done to Tennessee's playoff hopes? Let's run through the scenarios next on the Sports Source.
Away from home? Watch the Sports Source live at WATE.com.